our thoughts and things like that. However, this is something you can do that in getting moving physiologically, those endorphins that kind of make us feel good, they start to release. And it will help us with these other things that we're also telling you to do. So exercise is huge. And I also like, I'm glad you brought up the point of dealing with the feeling. And I want to add, identifying that feeling. Don't be afraid of the feelings. Our positive and negative feelings are healthy for us. We need them both. If we didn't have negative feelings, how would you know we're in danger or that something was wrong? So don't be afraid just because it's a feeling you're uncomfortable with. Because they are a very important part in our lives. And identify them. Sometimes it's anxiety wadded up with other stuff. So just being able to work with ourselves about what is really going on with ourselves.
You mentioned. I'm sorry. You had mentioned something. I want to go back for everyone. And actually, someone posted this on social media, and it had to do with this was a time that since we had so much time, a lot of people were putting a lot of things to try to complete before quarantine is lifted in this that means as far as time wise when quarantine is lifted. And so we definitely want people to know much pressure on yourself. Life is a journey. Your goals, your personal goals that were there before will be after we move on from this period. So my encouragement would be to pace yourself. I know you have time, but we don't have to do everything right now. Once again, you'll be overwhelmed, like what the Apostle said. So my encouragement to those of you who are trying to do too much right now, scale it back a little bit, pick one or two to work on, be prayerful about the other ones, but don't beat yourself up, especially if you don't meet all those things in this timeline that you created for yourself, because all of us do it.
That's good. I need something about the exercise thing. Most people know I exercise, and I'd say it even as I preach all the time. I'll often say that's for me. A lot of people don't understand that because they think it's just a physical thing. But I'm like, when I can think, I can move my head. It's just very therapeutic. And so I try not to skip a day of some form of it just makes me feel so much better. So I agree with what you said. Okay. Do you think that people will be traumatized by the pandemic and the lockdown? If so, how should they come?
I think I want to first just talk about, we all will have a change of mind. All of our experiences in life affect us afterwards, right? Whether it's a positive experience or whether it's a negative experience, how we think about things are going to change. So while it will have a different viewpoint of life, everybody will have some level of vigilance. Not everybody may experience it at a level that is considered clinically traumatizing. Now, trauma and anxiety are very different, and so may experience that trauma, and that be a lot of clinical symptoms that are wadded together. And some people also affected may experience a different set of anxieties for different reasons. So, and that too may be a different set of symptoms together. So just because we're vigilant, just because we're more vigilant or hyper vigilant, if you will, it doesn't mean that we are traumatized. However, there may be a group or subset of people that do experience it in that way, and that will have to do with what their experience was. So what they actually encountered during the lockdown or during this pandemic COVID-19.
I agree with Doc. The question is, will people be traumatized? Of course, it's a resounding yes. It's going to be, like she said, on different scales. Trauma can be many, microscopic in a lot of ways. I was noticing with myself, we've been in this state for about 50 days or so. I'm record time, somewhere around there. But for me, time is kind of like slow all the way down. And so it's weird because over the past couple of days, when I have gone out and about myself, subconsciously while walking past people, I wonder if I'm going to get it. I wonder if I'm going to get it. It's just in the back of my mind. Not thinking about it. I don't know if asymptomatically I've had it. Who knows? But of course, I've had the insights. Oh, that's some little small acute trauma there because now you've created this small paranoia to be around people. Didn't even know I would have it. But the issue, that's how trauma can look. And I think sometimes we kind of look past it, even the little small symptoms, because anything that will interfere with how you'll operate normally is what trauma will look like. So I had realized, okay, unplug. You got some acute things going on around here. You can't be afraid to go around people. Be cautious. But I have some true legit fears, with it. So, of course, some ways to deal with it. I always circle back around to, for me, to personally unplug. It is very difficult to do. I do a lot of my branding, a lot of growth online, but I've learned I literally have to go on there, handle business, and get off. It's the only way I'm going to cope. We're encouraging people with the things we just told you about dealing with anxiety in general. How to deal with your trauma can be the same way. But dealing with trauma is going to, of course, take that stuff, which is something we can come back to on another whole chat, or it's going to take taking yourself away from what's kind of your trigger. So that's kind of what I'm personally trying to go through right now.
I want to ask. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, vigilance and being careful, though. I do want to make that distinction. He did mention that, but I want to make that distinction, being vigilant, being careful, and experiencing trauma are different. The line is thin, and so it's going to be just about being honest with yourself. We lie to ourselves a lot. We pass things like, I'm going to be okay, or I'm going to be okay, or it's not that. Sometimes we need to sit in those feelings and really understand how many is we down and wrong.
That's good. Because I wanted to just ask this. This is kind of came up in my mind. I know people who are on levels of isolation. Some people really isolate, don't go out, they don't go to the store. If it cannot be ordered, they don't get it. They order everything in, they don't allow anyone in the house. They're just alone. And then some store run or something like that as an outlet to just get out of the house for a minute. But it seems like the people that don't go out of the house at all, they seem to be in a worse psychological state or mental state, if you would. You think that's something to completely isolate like that because they're so the illness, or they go out every now and then, at least take a walk or something.
I'm careful to say, what people should do, because I think that differs per person, per risk level, and people have to make, what you will, not making them solely based on emotions, making them solely based on logic, but a healthy combination of logic and actions to make those wise decisions about what's best for them. However, I will say there is a such thing as avoidance when it comes to managing anxiety. We all share anxiety in some way, shape, or fashion. The question becomes whether we're managing it in a healthy way versus an unhealthy way. So then when we talk about avoidance, that does manifest itself at a high level with people who have a lot of anxiety. They remove themselves or avoid that thing that causes the increased uncomfortable feeling of anxiety. However, if they're doing that just because they don't want to experience the feeling, then it starts to exacerbate how much anxiety they feel. So get ready to go out, there's a little bit more anxiety and builds on each other. It starts to build on itself to the point where, it will become debilitating to have to do so. So for people, we are a social being, so it's healthy for us to be in contact with each other. So even if they're not doing it by going out, even if they can do it via phone or via face to face via technology in some way, we need to be talking to someone. So totally isolated is never healthy in any circumstance. However, how people have isolated, whether they go out or whether they're doing it via social media, I think that depends on risk, what's important to them. However, watching out for that avoidance factor would be the key.
Do you have any other
comments? I want to go back to Doc's previous comment about vigilance and caution. Vigilance and caution is one thing, but excluding health reasons, succumbing to fear is always going to be dangerous, no matter what. No matter what the mental health symptom is, no matter what's going on the outside, succumbing to fear is always the issue. Because what happens, and this is extremely in general statement, what happens in general is that when we self-isolate, we only open ourselves up to receive information that's coming in. We don't really get any information that may be actual, that we may receive. We go out and see real. And so I would say there may be a segment of population that is only self-isolating out of fear and what's been fed to them by outside sources. And when you self-isolate, it takes it to do want to as I think that we are always open and ears are open to assist those clients who we may encounter who don't know how to separate fear from vigilance and caution, because the line, like Doc said, is happens.
You mentioned the next level, Mr. Cleveland, taking that anxiety and emotional distress to the next level. When we do sit in that isolation, we start to conjure up our own thoughts based on the information we receive. And many times, if not most times, those thoughts become irrational. And that just keeps the cycle going, again, exacerbating the emotional distress and the feelings of anxiety.
One thing, I guess the biggest thing is for those who are tuning in is if you have isolated more than you possibly should have, I would encourage you, health permitting, to step out there some moment. I don't care if it's your backyard. Get some fresh air. I don't care if it's in your car, drive around the block. So you won't have to interact with individuals if you're not comfortable with that. It's okay with transitioning back in. But I do definitely encourage breaking whatever shell you've put in. And ironically, when we do those little things, we start to feel a little bit different.
That's good. Okay, well, more specifically, how do you feel first responders like medical professionals and law enforcement officers will be affected by this?
Okay, there is a certain level of trauma that comes with certain jobs. research has that first responders do deal with a lot more trauma, or they're more susceptible to experiencing trauma. Now, it looks very different for them by clinical definition, in that, for them, it may exhibit as emotional distress coupled with some symptoms associated with trauma. But by reason, do know that first responders or those on the front line of disaster or traumatic episode or event, they do experience emotional distress, whether it's by way of trauma or any other form.
And just to kind of paint to you all with that, just think about all the different characteristics that we've talked about today. Those who may be fearful, those who are seeking answers, have misinformation, but you have to go to work because you're a first responder. Anyways, you got to pay the bills. And so that individual has all these feelings of anxiety inside themselves, but they still got to go into that hospital. They still have to go on duty or whatever their deal and juggle all those things at one time. I've never seen a time like this before. I'm a pastor's member, but this still does not leave them that. This does not look like military training. This does not look like some duty for a police officer or a firefighter. It's extremely different. This is a first responder, possibly seeing people who have passed away, seeing people who are looking at charts of people who are sick. So the possibility that, as Dr. said, many of them will have some residual effects, some trauma that may last from just being exposed to all of those images. But ultimately, there is no way to tell. But research tells us that there may be some effects of trauma ongoing because of what they've been exposed to.
Is it healthy for them to just get right back out involved in work after something like this dies down and that they've had some type of negative, mental?
The important piece is going to them getting the appropriate help if they are having anxiety or traumatic symptoms in any way. Talking to someone properly that can help them assess it's okay for them to continue to re-engage or whether they do need to take a step back. I think that question will be very specific to the person, what they're experiencing, what they have experienced, and how it has affected them now.
I will say this. I agree, but I also school of thought that mental health has to still remain active. And so I feel like for a lot of first responders who may not know that they have any trauma, it could be helpful that they just do a check-in with somebody like us. Just for 30 minutes to an hour. What's your thoughts about that?
I agree. I agree with that. And from the standpoint, especially first responders or people in that fast pace, they have lives too. So, and they often work long hours. And I'm specifically talking about healthcare workers at this point. But first responders expand further than just those nurses and doctors. But specifically to, I think that is important because they want to ask for help or they don't like to ask for help. That population. So. Taking that is a fast-paced environment, taking that minute to self-care and really understand what's going on with them be helpful.
What are some signs that people should look for to kind of indicate that they need to seek out help, and how early would they need to seek help?
Signs. That was a loaded question. There are so many. What I will say is, I do want the theme that we're kind of talking about tonight, which is anxiety. We first mentioned that there's small things. Seniors eating more or eating less than you would not have before. Panic attacks. Insomnia's a big one. That's actually been kind of highlighted since we've been in COVID. If you haven't had sleeping problems before, that could be another one. Irritability, that could be another one you can deal with. Small little things, fidgeting more, snapping at other people. Those are all little signs that people should be. I think that the biggest issue with mental health ongoing is that sometimes people just self-assess. And so I think that's kind of what me and Doc are, our missions as therapists are trying to educate as many people as possible to assess for the looks before we become big things.
I agree. Before even getting to the point of whether we would know the signs, self-assessment is key, or awareness. Awareness is key. If we're not aware, we likely will, to the point where we've made things have kind of spilled over and kind of out of control before we understand. But the important thing to understand is that therapy is not just for when it's a problem, like Mr. Cleveland said before. Even if you don't know, one assessment or initial evaluation to help you understand, I feel like I'm handling this okay, but something is not right, or something feels off or weird, or I just don't know. Speak to someone about that to help you figure out. The signs don't have to be big, and you don't have to wait until things get to clinical sense of what anxiety is to reach out for help. Therapy is there for people who just want to make sure they're on the, or just for people who want to improve where they are. Necessarily have to. It didn't have to be a level that's problematic for you to understand, for you to seek help. So then, to that question, I would, if there are some things about you that you're trying to figure out and you don't know how to figure it out, is clinical or not, to prevent from getting to the point where you have no further choice but to go see someone.
And you said something there, that little right there, something is off. That little small thing was enough to kind of pick up the phone. I think a lot of times we're so programmed to kind of tough stuff out. Things are off. We kind of just don't pay attention to it and say, okay, this is just one of those days. But that little small subtlety, something is off, is enough to pick up the phone, have a small chat with someone, even if it's not a therapist, to have a small chat with someone right before they say, you may need to call a therapeutic professional to talk to.
People, if you're right, it doesn't always have to be a therapist. If you're going to choose to talk to a friend, someone who is positive, and it's important that you're not talking to people that feed into what you're feeling, but that can be honest with you and direct you.
That's good. That's a good thing. I think it's time we can switch gears now, and we want to go to our audience and see if anyone has any questions that they want to ask for this next few minutes. And perhaps some people have posted a question or whatever. If you have any questions and you haven't posted, or if you're on the chat, you can unmute your microphone and ask a question. like.
I don't necessarily have a question, but I would like to make a comment. I think the more we put the message out there, the more it needs to be heard. There are a lot of people hurting. It's uncharted territory, and we have to keep talking. Otherwise, we'll lose individuals, not only COVID-19, but we'll lose people to anxiety itself. So I think that's the big deal.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? I know I was talking to...
Can we explain it very clearly, or...
And there are perhaps a couple of other therapists on the line that I know that we're supposed to be joining. If you want to met, you're free to do so at this time.
Hey, Apostle.
Hi. Who is this?
Can you hear me?
Now I can. Who is it?
This is James Adams.
Okay.
I would love for a little bit about clarity a little bit, especially in the African American community, when it comes to both the health challenges that we're seeing in our community that plays into, and I hope I didn't miss that comment, I've had a poor connection, how it plays into our own health, both physically and mentally so, as a physical, of course, our eating habits. Okay? And then also mentally, what we're often fed about therapists and to have these conversations. I'd love to you guys to speak to your vision or your ideas around how we dismantle that pipeline, if you will.
Well, I think I'll try that as much as I can. So as far as the stigma around it, that's what I mentioned earlier, and I'll go back to that. You know, we don't have to wait till we're in trouble talking to someone. We don't have to be in trouble to start talking. If you are uncomfortable, if you have that's